let me say welcome to each and every one of you. And I appreciate the fact, and the district committee appreciates the fact that what you have done is sacrifice some time. And I'm looking out the window today and I'm going, it is definitely better than the weather was in Cranbrook yesterday. So I hope that the weather is worse in your place so that you don't feel you're missing all of the sunshine that we really need. One of the things that I want to ask you to do is during the main part of the session, I'm going to ask you to remain on mute. And I'm going to say, if you have questions, there are 3 people from the district committee, or 5 actually on the committee, who can receive your questions. We're going to focus on Karen Cook, Bill Fury, and Jim Feeney. And please select one of those names to send your question to rather than sending it to everyone. At the end of the session, we will have a lot of time that will be available to use for questions and answers, okay? I'm not going to shut the chat mode off because I know that you still like to be able to chit chat back and forth. Your screen name, I hope, reflects who you actually are rather than a nickname. We do take attendance, and at some point towards the end, I'll be doing screenshots to make sure that we have accounting for all the people who were able to get on, and we'll then receive official attendance so we can send the quizzes out at the end. Attendance is important, and so is a successful result on the quiz that comes at the end. Now, the quiz will not take you 3.5 hours. There are no essay questions. It's multiple choice. There's only 20. And you will be asked to send the quiz to Bill Fury, who will then distribute it around to our committee so that the results can be marked and your results can be sent back to you as soon as we possibly can get them. This qualifies you, not your club per se, but you, because you are one of the people who's being trained, and we expect that you will be either one of the 3 people who is named on a district application, a grant application, or you will be the club steward, one of those positions. And if you are not one of those, then perhaps you're just wanting to learn a lot more about district grants. And that's a good thing. It really, really is. Okay. So let me start by sharing my screen. And we'll get to that.
Alan, I see that Karen is not on board yet. Do you want me to call her?
She'll probably be on longer, and I think between the 2 of you, and if Jim needs to pop in with questions at the end, he'll be able to cover it between you and he. Jim Bauer also may have questions later on, and that'll be fine. Okay. And I'm going to make sure that we kill my video, and there we go. So,
Alan, before you get started, Post Falls has their hand up.
Post Falls, question. Who's the person who wants to ask the question from Post Falls?
I don't have my hand up. I don't know how it's up there. I'm sorry.
You wanted to leave the room?
No, I don't know why I didn't put it up. I haven't touched anything, so I'm not sure why it has my hand up. I'm sorry.
Okay, don't worry about that. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you monitoring that. Okay, so if you are here to think that you can get some qualification and eligibility for global grants, that doesn't happen here. You need to go to the Rotary.org website, and from there go into the Rotary Learning Center and take the sessions called Grant Management Seminar. There's about 9 modules in there, and they vary in length for the time it takes to complete them. And you need to do those so that you earn qualification and eligibility to receive grant money from the Rotary Foundation. That's a TRF, that's an abbreviation I'm going to be using a lot. So today, this is what I want to try and cover, and these are the points that are important as far as the district grants are concerned. First of all, what are the types of grants that there are, and how do you connect to them? And how do they connect to each other? What are the similarities and the differences? And the question that's probably in your mind and has been since you saw the notice on the district website, why do we have to do this? Well, there are certain responsibilities, and we'll go over the responsibilities of the club officers and the people who sign up on the application forms. Timelines are important. Make sure that you hit those, because in District 5080, we have been of the habit of having only one intake for district grants, and that is usually sometime in May. There are other districts that have multiple times for intakes for grant applications, but it's not us. We'll go through the application and the report, and then we'll have some time around the question and answer period. And I think we had a lot of time yesterday, so we expect that we'll have exactly the same coming in. The applications, okay, 1 second here.
We just lost you.
Yeah, I just had to mute because there was some people coming into the suite here, so I had to just ask them to maintain some radio silence. Where are the applications? Where do you get all the report forms and the other documents? You'll have a slide that'll give you that information. And that's something that may be of a concern to some people here, because the district itself is going through a shift in its platform for online presence. They're moving from Club Runner to a system, DAC-DB. We are very hard at work at making sure that the material that is present on the Club Runner site will be present in as easy an access a place on the new one when it goes up and running. Okay, so what are the types of grants? Well, let's look at the first type. Just because funded by Rotary Foundation or TRF money, I'm only going to mention the global grant here. The global grant itself has to have a minimum budget of $30,000. It gets assistance from a thing called the World Fund, where half of our money goes to, and district designated funds, or DDF. It has to be international, which means that there's a club at both ends, and both of those clubs have to be qualified according to the Rotary Foundation, and it must be area of focus centered. It does require certification or qualification. Some places call it certification, and that's fine, but you get that certification from the Rotary Learning Center. The district grants, this is the one that we're focusing on today. District grants have to have a minimum of $2,000 in the budget. They receive DDF assistance, which means that is assistance, not seed money. There are two different types of district grants, one for local projects and one for international projects. And they both require that the grant people involved have to have qualification, and there are rules and particular patterns of behavior that we need to make sure that you follow. There's a thing called an express grant. Some people call it a pop-up type of grant, and that's okay. It is in a way, because it is one of those things that is, while it's funded out of the district grant pool, it doesn't require that you have to go through qualification. It's a small thing because it doesn't have a lot of money associated with it. We've had it going for 2 years now. The first year was $350. The second year, because we had even more requests for funding assistance for district grants, we had to drop it down to $300. And there is no requirement in an express grant that the club has to put in any matching money. The other two have things that require clubs have to put in some skin in the game. So it doesn't come from any place else except contributions. Most of the contributions we know come from members. There's the opportunity for other people to provide money, and that money can go into the annual fund or into an endowment fund or to Polio Plus. Now, Polio Plus itself, you may think, well, we don't spend any money, but we really do. It is part and parcel of an opportunity to spend some money on projects, but it has to be directly Polio Plus related. These other two things, the annual fund and the endowment fund, is where we get the majority of the amount that we can consider our bank account for projects from the district. The annual fund is money that is pledged every year and donated by members and friends of members from fundraisers and things like that. It is invested at the end of that year, and after 3 years, money comes out back to the district, split 50-50. The endowment fund is another and the endowment fund is never spent, but the earned money from interest goes into that share. And between those two things, that's where we get the money for our projects. All of these particular projects require some thinking as to which type of grant you really need to look at. Now, it's important to determine whether you need to go to a district grant or a global grant. This particular slide here shows a decision tree with simple yeses and nos, and except for one small area, it's a good one to follow. It is found in the committee manual for club foundations, and you should be able to look at it by downloading it off the RI website. We start off with this, and let me just read a little bit of it. Basically, the question is, are the sponsors implementing a project in an area of focus? A lot of people think that the area of focus has to be identified for any kind of grant from the Rotary Foundation. Not true. Humanitarian grants and humanitarian focus is really the focus here, but not necessarily one of the 7 areas of focus. I know it says 6, we're at 7 now. If the answer is no, you can probably then apply for a district grant to a certain point. If it is yes, then you could probably look at the next decision. How big is it? If it's a $30,000 project or more, then you're looking at not a district grant, but a global grant. One of the things that it says on this chart here that is now wrong is that district grants activities have no minimum budget. Not true. District grants in our district in particular have a minimum of $1,000 from the club. And the budget for the project has to be a minimum of $2,000. You can't ask for support of less than $1,000, so that means the club is putting in $1,000 as well. Hence, that's how we got to the $2,000. Okay. When you choose the right grant, you also have to consider certain other things. Good management means that the grant committee is not a one-person thing. That's asking for trouble. Asking for trouble in so many different ways. If something happens, health-wise, what are you going to do? Second, isn't one of the main things that we do in Rotary to give opportunities to learn new skills, to enhance people's leadership and learning in different tasks? Why not then have a committee that's not just 1, but 2, 3, 4, 5 people, so that you can work with a lot of grants and allow people to learn how to go through and do the type of project management that we do in Rotary. That's the best thing. Stewardship also means that you check things twice, not once, but twice. Stewardship also is important because we're not necessarily using just our money. We're using money from all sorts of different places and many, many people. And of course, when you are looking at a project and a successful grant, and that's what we're always after, good results come from good pre-planning. That's the important thing. If you provide for a solid committee to work on the project and the application, that way any unforeseen events won't hamstring you. Life does take strange twists, and we know that. That's one of the other reasons why we have a thing called, or a person called, a club stewardship man, our person. That stewardship person is actually identified in the memorandum of understanding, and it reads like this. Under club officer responsibilities, the individual appointed to manage club qualification and to ensure that stewardship measures and proper grant management practices are implemented cannot be responsible for oversight of the grant-funded project or be a signatory of the grant bank account. That's what your steward is going to be. That's the person who makes sure that you've got everything on track, doing it right, getting all the stuff done, and supplying, in some cases, some fresh eyes. It is something that was referred to in the Rotary Foundation documents, but it seems to have just slid by a little bit on us. And of course, the president needs to sign documents and the president-elect. The reason for that is that while the application is going in now, for the president to know that it's going in, they should be aware, they sign it. But the project is going to be done in the president-elect's year. They need to be aware of what's going on as well. So here are some of the things that all of these grants have in common. Okay, first and foremost, every one of the applications requires 3 club members to sign. And of those contacts, at least 2 have to be trained. Plus, you need a stewardship person, and they need to be trained. They need to have an idea of what they're expected to do, hence they need to be trained. Finally, or not finally, but most importantly, the club has to make a contribution to the project. And the district would match the club cash. They can't match anything less, anything more than, but they can match less. Sorry about that. A final project, final report with photo, copies of the bank statements, not the real ones, but the actual copies. And the same thing for expense receipts. Do not send actual receipts or bank statements. You have to keep those copies, and you have to keep them on record for 5 years, I think it is. Every grant requires a report. The frequency of the report, though, depends upon the type of grant, essentially. But if you want to use a rule of thumb, if you finish the project, make sure that you get the report in and completed within 2 months of that date. Okay? Any surplus monies are obviously returned to the district, or if it's a global grant, it goes back to the Rotary Foundation. And the key thing here, last bullet, is club money is spent first. Not district grant money, club money. The grant money is considered and should always be considered as an assist, not seed money. If the project is going to stretch past the first reporting time, which is in mid-April usually, then a progress report is needed to be filed. We need to make sure that money is going to be spent by the club on that project. The key thing here, don't want money going back after this date. Okay? We cannot apply for the following year's money, the block grant, until we've closed the current one. And we don't close the current one until we know that all the money has been accounted for and has been spent. Sending it out to the clubs does not constitute having it being spent. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it does complicate matters if all of a sudden we get to the point of, oh, well, we're going to have $300 left over. We'll just keep that for the club. No, you don't. It comes back to the Rotary Foundation. Or maybe you'll be able to find a way of using that surplus money to enhance the project that you were working on. Again, we'll talk about that as a possibility later on. What are the differences? Well, the location. Obviously, if you have a district grant for a local project, it's in someplace in 5080. If you're doing an international one, you're in another country and obviously another district. Do you have to have another club at the other end for an international project for district grant? No. It's very handy if you do. It helps things a lot, but it's not required. Expenses can obviously be in different currencies, and that's an important thing to deal with. And our stewardship person will help you with that as well. But all of the reporting eventually has to be done for US dollars. The currency exchange rate, once you convert a grant the first time when you deposit it, that locks in the exchange rate that you use all the way through the reporting period. Each grant has to have its own bank account during the duration of that particular project. If you need to modify something within the project, you need to ask for permission first. Once that's given, then you can spend the monies that might be there, but you can't ask for more money and you can't change the budget. All you can do is enhance the project or change it in a way that matches, say, things that came up that you can't get that particular thing anymore, but you can get an alternate. Global grants and district grants both require what are called MOUs, or Memoranda of Understanding. Express grants do not. And these memoranda of understanding, there are two types. One is called an MOU between the club and the district, and that binds the club and the district to certain conditions and behaviors. There's another one that is used for cooperating agencies. If you are working with another organization, you will need to make sure that that MOU is also signed. And that comes along with the application. These MOUs require signatures from club officials as well. It's an important thing to remember. Now, one of the other differences in these types of grants, they can be funded through either a global grant or a district grant. And I'm going to ask to have Rebecca Colvinson, who is the Vocational Training Team Subcommittee Chair, to unmute and explain a little bit about VTTs and the differences between those formats, global grants and district grants. Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for giving up some time on your Sunday. So the Vocational Training Team, which we often shorten to VTT, if you see that, that's what it stands for, is actually a group of professionals who travel abroad to teach local professionals more about a particular field, or for that group of professionals to learn more about their own field. Now, we're not doing a lot of traveling right now, right? So VTTs have kind of been put on hold, but it's important to know that if you are thinking about doing a VTT in the future, you can use either a district grant or a global grant. Deciding which one you'll need will depend on your budget mostly, but you can use the same decision tree that Alan showed you on the other slide to decide where your vocational training team would fit, if it would fit within the parameters of a district grant or if it fits within the parameters of a global grant. And then the vocational training team has actually replaced the group study exchange, which some of you might be a little bit more familiar with. So with the group study exchange, I just wanted to kind of list the difference between the two. The group study exchange, which is shortened to GSE here, is more of a hands-off approach, where the VTT or vocational training team is a more hands-on approach, where it actually includes training and sharing best practices, where the group study exchange is more about experiencing things and exchanging ideas to bring back home. And then, of course, I will answer any questions at the end of the presentation as well, if you have any questions about the vocational training teams.
Thanks, Rebecca. And for the rest of you, sorry about that old slippy slidey. I'm not on ice, even though I'm in Canada and hockey rinks are a favorite place to have rotary things. It's just this is a new countertop and the mouse loves to skate around on me. Anyway, one of the things you're wondering about is basically, what's the point of this qualifications session and why do we actually have to do it annually? In some cases, the Rotary Foundation has actually updated things. They've changed conditions or added requirements. In other cases, we've discovered that we weren't as fully explanatory for clubs versus qualifications and such, like the stewardship thing. And in other cases, we just wanted to make things work a little differently to make it even more successful. But the first thing is, it's not your money. It's somebody else's money too. It may be some of your money, but it's not just your money. And so as a result, you, Rotary, and the Rotary Foundation have a reputation to uphold. It's really, really important that we do that. Applications do say what you want to do, but you have to make sure that you understand what you are allowed to do. Things do change from year to year, and stewardship especially requires it. Good stewardship is an important thing and a hallmark of all Rotary projects and Rotary Foundation grants. It shows transparency. It's good record keeping for future projects when you all of a sudden say, how did we do that a couple of years ago? I wonder if we can use the same kind of thing. So you can use applications for templates because you have to store things and you have to keep records. And you can also make sure that other people in the club will get a chance to use those when you're not working on it. And when you're working on things, what are your key responsibilities? who are your helpers and what are your resources? I'm wondering whether Karen's on right now, and if she is, you may have had, let's say, some dealings with Karen before. She was 2 years ago recognized as the District 5080 Rotarian of the Year at the district conference in Spokane. She has worked on foundation projects and on the foundation committee longer than anybody else in this district, I think. She has experience that can't be matched. And I would call her, without embarrassing anybody, a resource person extraordinaire. Karen, if you're on, would you unmute yourself and give us a little idea of what your job is as the District Foundation Treasurer?
Thank you very much, Alan. I'm on. And that's quite an introduction. So thank you very much. I am the District Grant Treasurer. And that means that when our block grant is approved and funded and the money is transferred from the Rotary Foundation to our district, it arrives in a bank account that I manage. I have the checkbook. I write the grant checks and forward them to Jim so that he can countersign them, co-sign them, because all of our checks have to be double signed, and then he forwards them to the clubs. I reconcile the bank statements monthly, and at the end of the grant cycle, when we are doing our independent financial review, I cooperate with the accounting firm that is doing that review and provide whatever information they request. It's a great job. I'm just finishing my 4th year with 1 year more. And if anyone would like to learn the job of grant treasurer, I am going to leave the post in July 2022 and would love to have a year of shadowing from the next person who's going to have the job. I also wanted to let you know that grants are near and dear to my heart. And because I've been working on them for a while, if you would like to have an extra set of eyes, look at your club's grant application or your final report before you submit it. I'd be more than happy to do that. Another set of eyes is always a good thing. And I might see something that you haven't seen because you're so close to the project and the paperwork, and it's brand new to me. So use me if you would like an extra set of eyes. And in the meantime, after our block grant is funded for the next cycle, you'll be watching for a check with my signature on it. So thank you, Alan, and that's all I have.
Thanks, Karen. I really appreciate what you've done for us in this district and the time that I've had a chance to work with you, not just in the foundation, but also in the other job that we had in Youth Exchange. Another person who is deeply involved with the grants is District Stewardship Chair Bill Fury. Now, this is a job that could be for you, but Bill has the qualifications that I think suit him perfectly for this job. He is a retired law enforcement officer. He used to carry dangerous things like fines and pencils to write up citations and stuff like that. And he's a wonderful guy to work with, just like Karen. And he is devoted to making sure that the ultimate goal from our foundation committee is that you, your clubs, your projects are successful. Bill, you're unmuted. Would you kindly give us a little bit of an idea of what stewardship is all about and the job that you do in it?
Thanks, Ellen. And thank you, everyone, for attending this training session. Remember that your grants committee is conducting these training sessions because we really want you to be successful in your grant, and we are here to assist you in that regard. I'd also like to thank our wonderful grants committee, We work so well together and work on a consensus basis. My time as district stewardship chair ends July 1st. We need someone to take this over. Working with our group has been very rewarding to me. So if you would like to join the team, let me know, or Alan, or our incoming governor, Lynn, or incoming foundation chair, Bill Dunwoody. Remember that you also get to work with an exceptional governor team. And thanks to Bob for stepping up to help Tim out and the team out. Your grants committee has worked hard and has come up with some changes that we think will help you. There will always be a few bumps along the way as new procedures are implemented. We ask for your patience and understanding as we move forward. Remember why we are making these changes. So let's get started. Your club and district memorandum of understanding, commonly known as MOU, has always been required for each club to have a stewardship Rotarian for each grant. To help you be successful, we are now requiring that the steward of your grants be trained. Please also note that you do not qualify your club, as Alan has already said, anymore, but you do have to qualify each grant by training 2 of your 3 contacts, and the third one if possible, and also your president and incoming president, and a separate stewardship Rotarian. They can't be one of the contacts. Let's talk about the responsibilities of the steward for your grants. Stewardship duties include the following: assist with implementing the club district memorandum of understanding, including developing the club's financial plan that provides effective oversight, good stewardship, and consistent administration of funds. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Is responsible for implementing, managing, and maintaining your club's qualification for each grant, just like we're doing now. Again, each grant must be qualified. You no longer just qualify your club for all grants. And we're trying to say this a few times so that everybody knows that. Your steward is to ensure that there are no actual or perceived conflicts of interest. Many possible conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest can be solved, but these need to be addressed before the grant moves forward. It is so much easier to deal with these before they become an issue later in the process. So deal with these possible conflicts of interest at the outset. And if you have any questions in that regard, get in touch with me and I'll help you out and we'll work through anything that is a problem. Your steward is to ensure proper grant management practices are implemented and followed, including the club's financial plan. The steward needs to be following the grant from beginning to end. The steward cannot be responsible for the oversight of the project and cannot be a signatory on the grant bank account. The steward cannot be a contact on the grant. So what I mean by oversight is basically the steward is doing oversight but is not responsible for it. The responsible person who is doing oversight is your primary contact. When the steward is going through and following your grant, if there's an issue that comes up, then the steward will bring that to the attention of the primary contact and committee. The steward is to ensure that there is proper record keeping. Please refer to the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, for more details. It describes what is to be kept and for how long, etc. And it's all outlined in there. Your club steward can have the same steward for more than one project. If you're doing several projects and you only want one steward, that is just fine. The stewardship Rotarian can be thought of as a continuing auditor of the grant from start to finish. He or she is sitting on the outside of the grant to make sure that the grant is following all of the requirements. When, for example, an auditor arrives at your business, he or she is not part of the running of your business, but the auditor arrives to check things out and makes sure that the things are being done properly. So the steward is like a continuing auditor all the way through your grant from start to finish. Let's talk a little bit about the club's financial management plan. Every club must have a financial management plan, and the plan must include procedures to maintain a standard set of accounts that include a complete record of all receipts and disbursements. Again, please refer to your memorandum of understanding for more detailed information in that regard. It describes what the financial management plan must have. Please make sure that you have a plan for your club. It is a requirement. Your grants committee has developed a checkoff sheets to be included with each grant. These are designed to bring your attention to what is required for a successful grant. Make sure you read all that is on the checkoff sheets, and please make sure that you actually do what is asked of you on these checkoff sheets. Global grants are included with the checkoff sheet as well, and they also need to submit it with their grant. Your grants committee wants you to be successful, and to that end, we offer our assistance to help you out. Reach out to any of us on the grants committee for help at any time. And we'll answer questions a little later, so keep them coming in the chat box and enjoy the rest of your presentation today. And now back to Alan.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it very much. See, he's a pretty nice retired law enforcement officer, isn't he? As I said before, our primary focus is to make sure that you are successful. And the person who actually says, yes, you've been successful, is that district chair of the subcommittee. That's Jim Feeney. Jim Feeney is the grants subcommittee chair. He gets all the applications, he gets all the reports, and he even asks for help from us. He's done a yeoman job this year, and I appreciate the fact that he's here online. Jim, unmute please, and give us an idea of what you do in this process.
Thank you, Alan. So my first responsibility is to play golf with Alan whenever we're together, and unfortunately, COVID has precluded that, but we'll get back to that. More seriously, my responsibilities as they relate to the clubs are threefold. So as Alan mentioned, the first thing I do is I receive the district and express grant applications and I review them for compliance. And I do that with the help of the other committee members. So Alan and Bill and Karen have been very supportive of me. I'm sort of the new guy, and they've helped me with that and also with the reports. So when we get an application, we look to see if the project qualifies under the foundation and district guidelines. We check the income and budgeting math and make sure it matches. And we make sure the application and the required supporting documents, such as the MOUs and the checklists and the quotes for expenses, are complete. One of the things that you'll see on the application is that for any expense of $500 or more, there needs to be a quote attached with the application. If anything's missing or needs clarification, we then work with the club to get the deficiencies taken care of. We then put the whole package together and we make it ready to submit to the district grants approval committee. So that meeting is actually going to come up in May, and we'll submit the packages, the application packages, to that committee for their approval. So our objective is to do everything we can to make it possible for every application that reaches the approval committee to be approved. Then the grants progress, and as the grants progress, we're available, I'm available, and certainly Karen, Bill, and Al have all been available for support and answer questions, to review any authorization requests for additional spending and so on, or for alternate spending. Then we receive the progress and the final reports. Again, those are reviewed with help from the fellow committee members. We carefully read the report to make sure all the sections of the report are complete. When we notice something that is incomplete or a question that has not been answered, we'll refer that back to the club so that they can add that. So we also look at the budget the financial documentation, the photos, and the publicity. We review the expenses and match every expense with a receipt or a canceled check for that expense. They are then matched to the project bank statement so we can follow the money right through from the beginning to the end. And once everything is matched up and balances, we then let the club know that the final report is approved and the project has been closed. And then the third thing, that affects the clubs and my responsibilities is to encourage all of you to actually participate in district and global grants, and to let you know that help is available all along the way. If not from me, then from the other people on the foundation committee, and they're great resources and you should take advantage of them. And I think it's fair to say that we would all like to see more district grants take place. Our district is generally quite active, but there's some clubs who haven't tried out district grant, and we're available to help them get going. There are certain processes that have to be followed to do a district grant. Some of them are adjusted each year, and so we appreciate any feedback we get to smooth the process and to help you complete all of the aspects of the applications and the reports and so on. So any feedback you have is most welcome. With that, I will turn it back to Alan.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it very much. As I said before, our primary focus is to make sure that you and your club succeed in the projects that you want to do and get the available and appropriate help in financing them. There is a story, however, that I'd like to share with you, because some of you may say, well, how did they come up with all of these different things, or why did they come up with them? So let me share a story with you. Once upon a time, no, just kidding. We originally went with just the Rotary Foundation's requirement that someone from the club has to be trained. Now, districts, of course, could and still can set their own training requirements as long as the Rotary Foundation requirements are met. They can add some additional ones. We learned, however, that the basic Rotary Foundation training requirement was less than effective in our district, and that the club's someone who was trained was often not involved with the contacts on the grant project and didn't share what they had learned in training. Big disconnect. Project contacts without support from the trained someone sometimes made big mistakes, and sometimes those were big mistakes. The district decided it could make some sense, would make some sense for contacts on the project committee to be trained. And we decided that at least two of them, for the reasons that I said before, a committee of one doesn't work. We settled for at least two and gave some wiggle room to the club itself. The memorandum of understanding asks club officers to identify a person responsible for making sure that the club is qualified and the following stewardship guidelines. Now that's on the memorandum of understanding. And for those of you who will be searching that MOU out, it is page 3, section 1A. So that person needs to be trained, the two of the people on contact, and we have basically put that together in a way that can be done online as well as face-to-face. It was face-to-face training for years and years and years, but we had to make changes for this year. The district thinks that this is a reasonable thing. They came in contact with us. They asked for us to do certain things and to explain it a little more. We have done that. The conditions and the criteria for qualification are on the district website under the grants page, which is a sub-page of the foundation tab. And then you go to look at club and grant qualification, and it's all there. It has been for many months. But the important thing is that the district leadership has said, yep, this is reasonable, and we understand it. In fact, we understand it a lot better than before, and now we know what we can tell our people in the clubs. And these things will both enable and empower our clubs to plan and implement successful projects. So that's how we got to where we are. The people that you've heard from, Karen, Bill, and Jim, are very experienced people. Each one of them has been involved with a lot of projects with their club. They know what they're talking about. They are eager to help. Get to know them. Don't hesitate to ask them questions. You may think it's a dumb question, but let me assure you, I think we've heard them all. And I would appreciate it if you didn't see that as a challenge to come up with one. So once you've submitted the application, what happens? Is it an automatic thing that you can then, oh, good, we've got the application in. We can go ahead and spend money, and we can expect the grant money to come along anytime soon. What do we do next? Well, what do we do? So here's what we do. First of all, get back to the previous slide. Let's have a look at the application. First thing you have to do is download the application. The application is on the district website. This is the website that has District 5080 information. Now, before I go any further, I want you to understand that this is going to be using money that has been donated to the annual fund. It uses a pot that's called the District Designated Fund. And it comes to our district every year, if we apply for it. And it comes from money that was invested over a 3-year period from the monies that members in the club pledged. The person who's responsible for beating that drum is Jim Bauer. He's our annual funds subcommittee chair. And it's not necessarily a job that is spectacular or flashy. Jim has to do it. And I'm going to ask Jim if he would right now unmute himself and explain a little bit about how his his role as annual fund foundation chair, how it connects with the grants and grant applications. Jim?
All right. Thank you, Alan. I was waiting for that long introduction about how great I am, and that never came along. But I'll continue with the presentation. The grants come out of donations to the annual fund. What our district receives each year is based upon how much we have donated to the annual fund at RI. We don't get it back the first year. As Alan was saying, that money is invested for 3 years. The interest off of that investment helps to run Rotary International, the administration of the organization. But at the end of 3 years, that money does come back to us. Part of it. Some of it goes into the Global Grant Fund, and the rest of it comes back to our district to use for district grants. And it is important that our clubs, even in time of COVID or otherwise, continue to contribute to that annual fund if we want to have funds available to do grants and projects throughout the district or in international scenario. So part of my job is I will be communicating right at the start of the fiscal year with the club presidents and their foundation chair to ask them to make sure that they put down a goal. This goal is found, presidents are required to fill out a number of goals. And one of them is, how much money is your club going to donate to the annual foundation? And I'll remind them of that and try and get that. If you haven't done it, I'll remind them about a month into the year that we need that goal and we need you to contribute to the annual fund. This year, we're as of the end of March, we were within 5% of the district goal for the annual fund. Some clubs had exceeded their goals. Some clubs haven't. I'll be sending out a letter reminding the presidents and the foundation chairs that we need to keep going and finish strong this year so that we do have money coming back to us in 3 years for our grants. We attended a presentation last week that showed that in the last 10 years, the contributions to the annual fund have gone up about 6%. But in that same period of time, applications for global grants had doubled. And so money is getting tight in these in the annual fund, and we need to keep contributing so we can keep doing these district grants and district projects. So if you get a chance to bug your president-elect, foundation chair, please do. And if you have any questions on it, please go ahead and submit them in the chat room, and we'll try and answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Jim. One of the things that I didn't include yesterday, but I want to now, is that Jim has soldiered on in this particular year in this role. It's a thankless one in many cases, but he's done it at great personal expense to his health in some ways. He seems to have gone through the application of saying, okay, who needs a person to practice on? And he's had several surgeries that have been more than frustrating to him as he keeps trying to recover each time. I think personally, he's just simply using it, like I would, as an excuse to get more strokes on the golf course from the handicap. Thank you, Jim, for what you do, and I appreciate the fact that you work continually throughout the year with our clubs.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're going to give me more strokes now, Alan. Thank you.
While Jim was talking, I had to go over and get a larger hammer so I could make the keys on my laptop work and get back to the slide that we were looking at. Because one of the things that we talked about is once we got to the point of getting the applications in, and some people say, no, I got the application in, can I go ahead and then start spending money? The answer is no. There is a two-stage process that you have to understand. One is the application has to be approved after vetting and discussion at the district level. The second is that the Rotary Foundation then has the opportunity and the obligation to say yes to the collective spending for the district itself. Only after the second approval can you actually do any spending. But there are some things that you can do between those two. Once the district has said yes, there are things that you can set up. If you haven't got the grant account set up, do that. It gives you some place that you can put the club project money into. If you've got other clubs that are helping you and going to be giving you some money, you can ask them to send the money up and put it into that grant account, because the money's not going to come to you until after the Rotary Foundation has given the district the approval. And then, and only then, can you do something. The money's not going to come immediately. It doesn't fly. It doesn't come electronically and as fast as you'd like to see it. But these things of setting things up ahead of time can save you some time. It does take a little bit of time, and yet we are and have learned recently after doing some searching questions that once the club gets the money from the district that got it from the Rotary Foundation and gets the check off to you and you get it, you have 24 months in which to complete the actual project. We know that projects may, in some cases, be affected by weather, sometimes to great frustration of people who are implementing them. And it's one of the nice things that we did learn in the last few years, that the project, while it may have been funded, let's say, last year, and it's still not finished, that's okay. But what you do need to do is you need to send us a progress report. You also need to say, yes, the money has been spent or the money will be spent. And that's the key thing, because we don't want to send any money back. The money was put into the Rotary Foundation's annual fund to be spent on things that Rotary clubs like to do. So please make sure that those progress reports are filed if you can't get it done in that short period of time. I know this slide says no later than 18 months. But basically, we will talk about the actual timing on that in the question and answer period. You cannot start spending until the Rotary Foundation has told the district, yep, okay, you guys are approved. But you could do some things between the district's approval and the Rotary Foundation's. And again, let me reemphasize, the money that you spend first is club money. Club money. Okay? And it has to all come from that grant account, not the club's annual account, but the grant account. So now you've had that application. And for those of you who have not submitted an application, let's hope that you do have a project in mind, if not this year, certainly next year. The applications will be on the district website. These are district applications, district grants. That's why they're on the district website, not the Rotary International website. Okay? There's a checklist that goes with that, and it is helpful to make sure that you go through it one step at a time as you're doing this. Some people will have never done this before, and we put it together to be helpful that way. 3 members have to sign on that thing. That means sign. Actual signatures, you can do electronic signatures, yes, but those people are signing up not for celebrity, not for extra bonuses or to get out of having to pay club fines or something like that. They are the ones that are going to say, yep, we're going to make sure that this project gets done, and we're going to be responsible for implementing it and completing it and writing the report. 2 of those 3 people need to go through the qualifications like they're doing now. I should put also that the steward in the club is going to have to go through the same kind of training, because they need to know what it is they're responsible for making sure that these contact people are supposed to be doing and what the project is all about. But there is sort of an arm's length separation between the contact people and the stewardship people. Let me say something about the people on the contact listing. It may be that all of the contacts are not available for the 2 sessions that we had for qualifications this weekend. Can they still serve? Can you still get an approved project application? Yes, you can. The key thing is that the money that is going to be sent to the club will not be sent until we have proof that the qualification has been done. Okay? We'll talk about that later. The application does describe the project, why it's needed, what's needed to be done, how it will impact the community, and how it will impact the people around that project, and what involvement there's going to be for Rotarians. There needs to be some involvement with Rotarians, and that means more than, and certainly not limited to, oh, here, we can write a check to you guys and hand it over, and that's the project. No, that's not a project. That's a donation. So you're not going to be using district funds to do that sort of thing. Getting involved with the Rotarians, they have to heavy duty. It could be, shall we say, purchasing things, purchasing clothing, purchasing trees, as is the case, purchasing PPE, all those sorts of things. But you do that, and then you can hand those things over or work with the organizations that are going to be using those particular items. You're not simply writing one check to an organization to use in the way that they want to. Projects need detailed budgets, and they need to have directions of how you put that together in the currency that you're going to be looking at. For the most part, we'll be dealing with either US dollars or Canadian dollars. Occasionally, you've got projects in South America or Central America, and that means that you're going to need to use the currency there, okay? But make sure that your budget is showing the exchange rate for that particular currency. Usually, you are funding the project by the one club. That's your funding source, okay? Sometimes you've got other clubs, and if you have other clubs that are working with you on this funding, please list them, and list them by name rather than just simply saying other clubs, okay? The budget that you're putting in and the funding totals must match. They must match, okay? You have to make sure that you have your funding sources in place before you actually send the application in. And one thing that you need to understand here is that DDF, the district designated funds, that we're assigning as funding assistance to these projects has been traditionally 1-to-1. There have been years when the requests for assistance have been greater than the amount of money that was available. If that happens, there are a number of things that do happen. We will talk about that a little bit later, but for the moment, assume that it's a 1-to-1 thing. DDF is limited in the following way. If you're working on a local project, the maximum that you can request for assistance from the district grant is $5,000. The minimum is $1,000. If for an international project, a district grant can go to a maximum of $10,000. Again, the minimum is $1,000. And in all cases, the requested amount from the district grant assistance fund has to be equal to or less than the monies that the club is putting in. When the project is finished, a final report is expected within 2 months of completion. Again, the report form is on the district website. Rather than waiting for a month before the report comes in, or even worse, a week before the project report is due, why not download it when you download the application form? That way, as you're doing the project, you have an idea of what's expected in the report, and you work with that as you implement the project. Make sure that you complete the form clearly and completely with all the requested information. And one of the things that Jim mentioned was I got a mouse running on me. There we go. One of the things that Jim Feeney mentioned was that the financial data has to balance. It really, really does have to balance. You have to have copies of the expenses, and they have to be identifiable with budget items, have to be identifiable on the bank balance, and the income and the expenses have to match. Scan all of those documents, the expense slips, the invoices, the bank statement. You keep the originals and send along the copies with the report. It's an important thing to have. The auditor who reviews our materials at the end of every year will be looking for those. There is a checklist again, use it, and there are places for signatures at the end of the report. We've had actually a few reports come in without the necessary signatures. When we do these projects, we like to make sure that we do have a way of saying, this is what we did, this is how important, this is what it looked like, this is why it was fun to do. Include photographs. There's nothing better than a lot of photographs with people. With people. If you possibly can get a lot of people in there, great. Don't just show us, I don't know, a piece of playground equipment with nobody on it. Much better to see it with kids on it, or Rotarians. They like to play on playground equipment, don't they? But make sure that you include photographs, please. It's really, really important. Timelines. It's important to understand when things are expected. So let's have a look at timelines. Application, we want them in by April 15th. Guess what? That's passed. So if you are all of a sudden saying, oh, but we missed it, can we do something? You know that guy by the name of Jim Feeney? You might want to ask him for permission if you could actually submit something. But there's a point at which we have to say, no, I'm sorry, we're past the deadline. We're done. Make sure that your committee people that are listed as contacts are on there, okay? The grants approval meeting for this year is coming up on the 15th of May. We have, for the last several years, had it much closer to the beginning of May. But for all sorts of reasons this year, we're holding it a little bit later. Clubs will be notified. Once the results of that meeting are known, we do it online, and clubs will be notified whether their project was approved or not. And if it was approved, was it approved for the amount requested, i.e. a 1-to-1, or some lesser amount? That doesn't trigger any spending, so please make sure that you remember that. The Rotary Foundation, after they get our spending plan for the block grant, gets approved by the Rotary Foundation. They let the district know, okay, everything's cool. and we'll be sending your money along soon. That usually comes in late June or early July. When we get that notification, it will then be passed along to you if your project has been approved. At that particular point, everybody in the district associated with this project and application can breathe again. They know that things can go ahead, and that's when you can start spending the money that you've got in your bank account. When the check comes from the district with the grant assistance money, the DDF, you put that into the grant account again, and you continue spending to finish the project. But don't spend any money until you hear about the district being told by the Rotary Foundation everything's cool. Okay, that last slide says the district gets the money from the Rotary Foundation and sends it to the successful clubs. So if you've got a project that you want to start early in the summer, I would suggest to you that you don't set your date too early in July or even June, because we almost assuredly will not hear anything from the Rotary Foundation in June. That gives you zero wiggle room, and any spending prior to that notification is not eligible for reimbursement with grant money. Okay, that's an important thing to remember. Progress reports, again, for those projects that are not going to be finished by the end of that cycle time, and final reports within the 16 months. We're asking for it by the following December at the very latest. 2 months if you want to use it as a something to work around. 2 months a maximum after the project is completed. That's when you should have your final report in. So where are these forms? Where are all these documents? Where are these things that I've been talking about with acronyms and stuff like that? Well, first out there on the District 5080 website, that's the Club Runner one. And you then take the Foundation tab, which is towards the top, click on it, go to that page, and then in the side panel on the left-hand side, there's a section that says Grants. You click on that. That'll take you to the page that'll have all the information that you need, including all the downloads for the forms that you will want. That's where it is. District 5080 District website. Foundation, grants, downloads. It's pretty easy to get there, but you do have to log in to get there. Okay? That's where the stuff is. And we post fresh material as we make changes or requirements on the website. We post up new documents as are needed. One of the things that I want to stress here, one of the things that we made a change in, and it was simply because it does get a little tiring sometimes when you're looking at applications that are hard to read. Fuzzy scans, they're about as good as fuzzy dice. Don't send them. Look at the thing first to make sure that it's clear. If you can is and clear and crisp, maybe take it to someone who can give you one of that quality. And one thing that we will send back to you faster than birds can fly around the world, handwritten applications. We're just not going to accept them. I'm sorry. Just not going to happen. Jim mentioned the requirement for price quotes above $500. You need to keep that and send that along with any application as well. Okay? Remember your resource people. I know some of you are going to be doing grants and applications for the very first time. It's not easy. But resource people, who are they? Well, the club president, even though you may wonder whether they were ever trained, the club president was given some training about grants and foundation. Your club foundation committee chair, your international service chair, they probably have had some experience with grants. Your assistant governor definitely has a little bit more information. And between those people, they may know someone within the district that if they can't answer the question, they can direct you to those resources. The grants sub-chair, the stewardship chair, the foundation treasurer, and many other people within your own club who have done projects and grants. Talk to them, ask them for help. It's okay. In fact, it's important that you actually do that. At this particular point, after you have emailed, and that's one of the things that I didn't say, is email all your applications, email all of your reports. Please do not use snail mail. Things can get lost, and then we've got real trouble. But we are at the Q&A time, so I'm going to suggest to you that everybody can simply go on mute, and I'm going to ask that Jim Feeney be the person to start with any questions that he has, and I'm going to stop sharing right now.
So there were a couple of questions, Alan. One of them comes in: can other club members who were unavailable this weekend get certified in training by watching the video and taking the exam? And Karen was able to answer that as yes, that will happen. We're confident that not everybody was able to be here yesterday or today. Alan Peterson asked if we could review the timelines again for the final report. And Karen responded very well to that. The answer to that is final reports are due 2 months after the project is completed. If your project is not completed by April, you need to submit a progress report. The deadline for those reports, either final or progress, is April 15th. And just so you understand, the reason for that is we then have to take that information and complete the block grant report and submit it to the Rotary Foundation. So those are the dates that we work with. And I think, as Alan mentioned, one way or another, a progress report has to be submitted within 18 months. And if you figure 18 months from the time you get the funds, it's going to be December the following year. So those are the deadlines. Those are all the questions that I have seen. I don't know if anybody's seen any others.
Bill Fury, have you got anything?
Okay, I'll just address some of the questions we got yesterday and some today. Does the club require 3 trained individuals, 2 contact and 1 steward? Answer to that is yes. Do you have to receive funds from the district before you can start your project? Answer to that is no. What you have to have is approval from the Rotary Foundation, and you will receive that information. We will notify you that your grant has been approved and you're okay to start. So you spend your club money first. So as soon as you receive that approval, then start away. And as soon as we can get the money to you from the district and from the foundation, we will do so. Sometimes it takes a little longer than we like, but that's just the way it is. Timelines covered 18 months. Copy of slides was one of the questions yesterday. Yes, you will be able to have a copy of the slides because this whole presentation is being recorded and will be put on the website for people to take the course and so on. So, and I think Jim already answered that one. Must the stewardship person take the training? Yes. Question we had yesterday was sub-accounts. Yes, you can have a sub-account as long as you have separate reports so it's a separate thing. It cannot be mixed in with your club money. So if you have a sub-account that has separate statements and so on, you are able to do that. That's not a problem. Where were the new requirements posted? They've been, and Alan answered that. They're posted months ago on the district website showing under qualifications. It outlines all of that. Is the stewardship information written down? Yes, if you go and look at your MOU, it just says all of that. I think it was 1A or something. Anyways. Okay, I've covered that one. And one question we had yesterday is about the committee members you could contact or for help, and that would be Alan, myself, Karen, Jim Feeney, and that's about all I have. Karen, do you have some questions?
Actually, I didn't have any directed to me specifically. I did want to mention that clubs that only do one project per year using grant funds can use the same bank account from year to year. It can be just titled your club name grant account. My club puts $50 to keep the account open at the bank from cycle to cycle. So we start with a $50 balance, and when we close out a grant project, our bank account is going to have a $50 balance to keep it open until the next project. If your club does do 2 projects in any given year, you do need to have 2 separate accounts.
Great.
Alan,
Any other questions? Yes.
Go ahead,
Jim.
Another question came in while we were talking, and it refers to a project that takes more than 24 months to complete. Is the report due in 24 months? So I'll refer that to you, Alan, if you wouldn't mind dealing with that.
18
Sure. There's a really good chance that if you're looking at a project that's going to take that long, you probably need to split that project into more than, and that would go to the point of to be really, really well done. That's too large a project, and I think that we would run into more problems than we want to look at. My gut answer to the question in simplest form is no, don't do that. If you have a problem that you think you might run in past the 24 months, look for a way of splitting the project into more than one project.
Oh boy.
We had set a deadline of December 31st to have all of the reports submitted, final reports by then. So if you use that, then that's what we pretty much have to go by.
Is that 18 months later? Final reports are 18 months later.
Sorry, Kathleen, you're breaking up.
Okay. My comment was all reports have to be in 18 months final after the project is completed. The completion of the project should not take more than 24 months. Otherwise, the project should be split. If they're international projects, then that means that they have to both have 2 sets of forms and application information. Is that correct?
I don't think it matters whether it's an international district grant or a local grant. The 24-month condition applies. It's a touchy one simply because the Rotary Foundation and the answers we got back led us to working with the 24-month thing. Jim.
I think it was Tony wanted to amplify the question.
Or Karen.
It was Tony. I interrupt. The question really, from my mind, the reason I ask it is we've had international projects that have been impacted by hurricanes and terrible storms that can occur, 16 months into the project activity. So you weren't able to be knowledgeable enough to split at the time. Does that mean if an event like that occurs, then we need to decide how to divide the project? I'm not looking for a precise answer. I'm just saying there may be a natural phenomenon or something that happens outside our control during the period of a project that should have been done in 2 years, but now physically cannot be done in 2 years. That's the reason for the question. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a couple of situations like that. And Karen, I'll ask you to comment on that, and then Bill and Jim.
Just a couple of things. If it's a larger project, there's no reason why you couldn't divide it into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and apply for district grants in 3 consecutive years to get your project done. Especially if it's a local project. We've seen clubs do that quite often. Another way to look at it is if you're doing a project, an international project, that you might need a longer timeline for, perhaps scaling it up to A global grant would make sense because global grant projects don't have a deadline for when they get done. You just have to report on them periodically until they're done. So, if it's a larger project and a local project, you might want to divide it into parts and do it in consecutive years. But I would avoid getting your club in a situation where the timeline might go long. And I know that's hard with weather events, but we want to see district grant projects get done in a timely fashion, and they do have a deadline, and global grants don't.
Jim, Bill?
Yeah, we had, I guess if you leave it until 24 months, then there is going to be a problem because we have to have these completed within 24 months. So it puts the district in a really bad position if you wait until 24 months. We, as a group, had basically set December 31st to give us as a district time to make sure that all of these issues on the grant, your final report meets all the requirements and so on. If you wait until 24 months, then we're in a pickle because we have to have it done completed within that time frame. And I have another question here I'll now let Jim answer this. Can we use district grant funds to fund ongoing projects which carry over from year to year? If we submit a grant request each year, for instance, is the Dolly Parton Imagination Library a literature program for children ages 0 to 4 years of age? Some of the kids may be in the program for all 4 years.
I have an answer to that because we had that come up previously. With the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, you can do the same project year after year,
Yes.
but you can't support the same kids year after year. So if you're doing it the second year, it's going to be for new kids. It's not going to be the ongoing support for the same kids year after year. And that's covered in the grant terms and conditions. But it is perfectly fine to do it year after year for adding kids to your program.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. That was one that we dealt with a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those situations. Otherwise, you look at the whole thing of sustainability, which becomes a problem. The question that was asked around things like a hurricane, that's a particularly difficult one. We had one club in the district this year realized that they could not carry out their project shortly after they actually got the approvals, and it was because of the COVID. And so they returned the money, and it is being now repurposed in the Rolla Hippo project. It's a difficult one, and I think if you were to look at the let's say you're 8 months into the project and you've already sent the money down to a club, let's suppose, okay, they get hit by a hurricane. We might have to deal with that on a one-to-one situation with the Rotary Foundation. It's a hard one to call because that is such potentially a moving project that you can't predict ahead of time. So, Tony, I would think that in the case maybe like Honduras got hit by 2 hurricanes, one right after the other, and my club had a project that was getting ready to go. The other club in Cranbrook was also dealing with a project in Honduras, and they had to check to make sure that it would be a little bit of a delay, but they'd still be able to complete the project well within the 24 months.
Just a comment with regards to something like that. One of our global grants had an issue with COVID. and actually what happened is the grant got repurposed. They got permission from the foundation to repurpose it, part of it to help with COVID, and it worked very well, very well.
Okay.
There was an additional question that came in, and it says, if a project looks not to be meeting the timeline for grant closure, can a modification to the MOU to input phase be requested? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, I don't either.
I can elaborate. That was me, Jackie Gilbert, that asked the question.
Yes.
So if you're, say for instance, you're setting off on your project, you've signed your memorandum of understanding, you understand your timelines, and something happens, whether it's to do with a supply chain issue or something regarding materials for a project, and you know that you're not going to meet the timeline for closeout of the grant, can you go back to modify and put in phase 1 is to do this, complete this, and then phase 2 to do that?
I think the simple answer is no. If it looks like you're not going to be able to spend your grant money and implement your project, it probably would be wise to return the money and apply again the following year.
Okay. Thank you.
We've just got a question regarding the quiz itself. You have to reach 80% on the quiz to pass. If you don't pass, then yes, you can retake the course and redo your quiz.
Okay, I have a question that Dawn sent in, and see if I can pull it up here. I understand you to say that the money must be spent by April the 15th of the year. How does it fit with spending and reports? It simply isn't clear. The money does not have to be spent by the 15th of April. The money has to have been sent out to the clubs from the district within the 24 months. What we need is, if the money is not spent, let's suppose last year a project was approved and funded, okay, and we haven't yet spent the money on the trees, okay, but it is going to be spent like in May, all right? Here's what happens. We send in the progress report indicating that you do expect to spend all of the money and that none of it will be being sent back to the foundation account, so that we can then file that and report that the grant itself can be closed. The block grant can be closed. When the reporting is looked at by the auditor for the district, that report is included with all of the reports that they have access to, and it simply fits. They are aware of the fact that we have now a stretch that can go as far as the December after the grant project was approved. So it does fit. It's just that one of those things that it allows for work to be done. We know that it's going to be spent. It's not coming back to us. If it's not going to be spent, we need to know that before we close the block grant. I hope that makes it a little clearer, Don.
You essentially early in the briefing, and you might want to go back and look at this. You had said that the money had to be spent by April 15th, whenever you're putting together the closeout report, and that it wasn't just a progress report sort of thing. And that's why when I got hearing the variety of things on progress reports, I understood those to deal with the final report, not necessarily the money. And so I'm just suggesting to you to go back and take a look at that, because I got a little confused.
Oh, was it on one of the slides, Don?
It's one of the things you said.
Okay.
I think it was on the third or fourth slide.
Okay. If it was one of my commentaries, then I might well have slipped up. I'll check the slides to make sure that there is no confusion. But the key thing that we discovered when we wrote to Renee and said, is there a possibility? And here's why we would look at it. The thing came back simply, you have to actually have spent, and they're talking about the district, has to have spent that money within 20, and the project that it's funding has to be completed within 24 months. Then we have to go back and say, we can't apply for the next block grant until we know that there's nothing coming back from any other grants, or we have all of the monies that are going to be unspent. That's where the well, not necessarily April 15th, but we want to know before we're going to be filling in that spending plan. It does confuse things a little bit, and Karen was wringing her hands a little bit when we were learning that, but as well as I do, I push the envelope a little bit sometimes, Don, and I was worried about the people who do actually have frost in the ground in this part of the district, and that shut down a number of projects that now they can get at.
And ideally, most projects will be able to be reported by April 15th. It's unusual for clubs to need more time than that. When you think about it, you're starting your project in late summer. You've got summer, fall, winter, unless you're digging in the ground, spring, and hopefully those projects can be completed by April. If indeed they can't be, then we need to know, are you going to be sending any money back? Because in order to close the block grant so that we can apply for the next one, if any money comes back, it's part of closing the current block grant. So in April, we need to know, are you gonna spend it if you haven't, or are you gonna send it back? Because one way or the other, we got to close the current block grant to get the next one.
This is Tony. I guess what I'm hearing is two things. First, Alan, I heard you say you submit the request by April 15th. That's where I heard April 15th. And now what I think I'm hearing is by April 15th, we need to say we're going to spend the money for a project that could take up to 24 months. It clearly won't be done in 12 months or 10 months. So I'm confused about the second time April 15th has come up.
I'm not surprised, Tony. We want you to apply for your grant for the next cycle by April 15th, and we'd like you to report by the following April 15th, if possible.
I get it, because if we haven't done that, then we can't apply for a second grant by April 15th because we still have one open, right? Okay, well, I think I got the code. Thank you.
Yeah, we can't get a new block grant until the current block grant is closed, and we can't close the current block grant until all of the projects have reported to us that the money is going to be spent, has been spent, or will be returned.
Yeah, one of the things that Tony just mentioned, that he's got one project open and he can't apply for another one while that one is open.
That's not
still
true.
A thing sitting. It's you can do that. It's a bookkeeping nightmare. And I remember Karen when her hair was quite dark. It changed after she learned about the fact that we could work with two full years basically. But it's one of those things that it makes the bookkeeping for the club and the district just that much more complex. But it can be done. It's just numbers.
Well, good. That's good to know, because if we want to do that, we should do it. And then I recognize that there's a challenging. And for those of us that haven't done this before, just taking all these notes is going to be a while to digest them. So thank you very much. A lot of good information. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I have a question. is there a schedule or time for when you must close the existing grant block? So that would help a lot to remove the confusion as to when you need to know the financial status late in the year. When do you have to close the grant block?
The block, yeah, in other words, the one that we're operating on right now. Karen, would you answer that for him,
When
please?
must you close that to request one for the next year?
Well, we can close the block grant anytime once we know that the projects are going to be completed and no money is coming back. So if we knew that today, we'd be able to close our current block grant today, but we don't know that.
What is the latest date?
There is no latest. You just can't get your next one until you close the current one.
I understand that, Karen, but I think the lack of a firm schedule is leading to the confusion many of us are having.
Well, just think of it as district grants are for smaller, shorter term projects.
When do you normally close it?
So can I dive in here, Karen?
Sure, please.
So we asked for all of the reports, whether they be progress or final reports, to be in our hands by April 15th.
Understand.
Okay, so let me just follow through. So then from there, we will now try to go ahead and close the block grant. So we have a district objective to have that block grant closed and reported by the end of May. Okay. So that's our objective. Is it a requirement? No, that's our objective. And the reason it's by the end of May is so that we can turn around and make another block grant request for next Rotary year. And we would like to have that in the hands of the Rotary Foundation in early June.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Alan, I put a question in there, if you could read that.
Okay, I was just looking at it, and I'll take, the question is, there's a document on the district grant page titled TRF Terms and Conditions for District Grants and Global Grants, and it discusses scholarships. Basically, you're asking, you elaborate. It basically says, okay, you can use either a global grant or a district grant to fund a scholarship. And here's the conditions that you have to abide by if you're going to apply for a district grant for a scholarship, or if you're going to use a global grant for a scholarship. Karen, would you like to add to that one, please? Because you've been involved with a couple of those things.
Sure. If the scholarship is for postgraduate international study in a subject that is aligned with an area of focus, and you have a partner club in the host country, like any other global grant, you can do a scholarship using a global grant. If you wanted to do a different type of scholarship, you can use a district grant for post-secondary, for internships, for trade schools, but it's going to be less money and a shorter timeline, but both funding approaches are available for scholarships. It just depends on the amount, the type of study, and where it happens.
It has to be very specific, right?
Pardon?
I was going to ask a question on that. So can it be a scholarship for a group of students, or does it have to be for an individual?
That's kind of where I'm getting to. Does it have to be very specific? Like we already have a recipient in mind and we're going to be awarding this certain person, or can it be for a scholarship fund that we would have applications after that? come in?
It could be for a fund. We haven't ever had an application like that before, but keep in mind, you're applying, if it's a district grant, you're applying in the spring for the following Rotary year. So funding would come summer, and you'd have until the following spring, hopefully, to award those scholarships and pay for that education. Does that answer?
I think so.
Tiffany, let me ask you a question. Are you looking at, in your club, are you looking at setting up a scholarship fund and you're asking for a district grant to then put money into that fund?
Yeah, we actually already have a scholarship fund. Most of our fundraising we do all year goes into our scholarship fund. So I'm wondering if we can add to that scholarship fund that we already have. We've been giving out local scholarships for years, more than 10 years. So we already do local scholarships. I just wondered if a grant would be another way to help fund that fund.
You would not commingle those funds. A district grant would be asking for a certain amount of money to fund a certain number of scholarships within the grant cycle. You wouldn't be commingling club funds with the district grant. It would be a standalone, but it could be for instance, you apply for $2,000, $1,000 from the district and $1,000 from the club, and you plan to award 4 $500 scholarships for post-secondary study or trade schools or whatever. That is certainly possible.
Okay.
But keep in mind, you'd be spending that money in the grant cycle and you wouldn't be commingling it with other scholarship money in your club.
Okay. Okay, I understand that. Okay, thank you.
The key thing there is it has to be a standalone.
Okay.
Great question, though. Thanks for asking it, Tiffany.
That was a good question. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's not one of my areas of expertise, I must admit. I asked a couple of people who have slightly different identifications on their screen, like Post Falls Rotary, and I'm looking at you right now. I need a name to change that, or if maybe you could send me the name that applies to that particular one so that I can make sure that attendance credit is given properly.
I did respond to you.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I responded right after you sent it to me. It's K by Brock.
I got you. Oh.
Yeah.
I think I do. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that very much. Now I just have to scroll to it and find it. We now have Superman on the call, and I've got that person as well. Still looking for that. Yeah, I still can't find it. I'm sorry.
It's K Vibrock, Alan.
Okay, thank you. And somebody asked if we flunked the quiz, can we retake the course? Or do we have to have our club nominate someone a bit smarter? Well, chances are that there is nobody smarter than you. Yeah, you can retake the quiz. Mm-hmm. We're all about succeeding here. Any other questions?
I do have a question.
Carry on.
Okay, my question really is under the slide that was monies. There's a lot of information on that. And the last maybe couple of lines kind of faded into my blurdom. There's something that has to be done 2 months after the district grants. And that's all I got written down on that. And I'm just blind. I don't know what that was.
That Kathy, is you have to submit a final report within 2 months of the time that the project is completed.
Okay, thank you. are completed.
Yep. Any further questions? The sun's trying to come out, so I also think I hear somebody saying that there's a glass of wine with my name on it downstairs. So if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I thank you all very much for showing up today, asking great questions, pushing us well past the hour and a half that we had slotted. And I will not allow anybody to blame me, being a past district governor, for not knowing when to shut up most of the time. Thank you to Jim Feeney, to Bill Fury, and especially to Karen Cook, who have done yeoman service on this with me. And to Bill and to Rebecca, I appreciate the service that you do, and that you will be contacted future date with rewards, I'm sure, in immeasurable amounts. Thank you to all of you. We look forward to seeing the projects that you do. And on that particular note, I say
Alan,
good afternoon and good. Oh,
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Alan, stay on for just a minute, please.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
I have
and Jim as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Where do we take the exam?
It'll be sent to you.
emailed.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
great.
after you've done a trip around the world.
All right.
Well,
Thank
let
you
us
all.
know how that goes. Thanks for doing this for us. I really
Glad to be of assistance. That's what we're here for. That and the big paycheck.
And Zoom's helped.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye, you guys.
Bye now.
Alan, I wanted to mention I was tardy in joining the meeting because I had accidentally clicked on the link from yesterday, and the meeting actually opened from yesterday. And so I was sitting there thinking, something's wrong here. I'm the only one here. And then a lady named Nadine joined me, and we couldn't figure out why we were the only two on the Zoom meeting. So I went back to my emails to look for the link for today. And when I clicked on it, I lost her and was able to join this meeting. So Nadine, I have a feeling, did not join us today. So we might
You want to know why?
Why?
She was registered for yesterday.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. When we clicked that link today, it opened that meeting.
And that was, yeah, it would. Well, it still will, yeah, because that, Nadine had actually registered for both. And as a result, she got a letter for both.
Okay.
And so what she did was she clicked on the Saturday link, not the Sunday link.
Okay, well, we both made that same mistake, but I don't think she figured it out and joined us today.
I don't know whether for sure, but I have screenshots of all of the people who were on.
Okay.
And that's how I basically went through everything to see what was going on.
Yeah, we might have to reach out to her and say it'll be online soon, and sorry for the confusion or whatever, but I couldn't get back to her once I got into the right meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make a contact as best I possibly can. I've still got a few people.
Can I take a couple minutes of your time?
Yeah,
of course.
So I got pretty well confused in this scholarship discussion, because what I've read says the district has to appoint a scholarship committee. And then somebody asked me this question, a couple of weeks ago, and I referred it up the chain of command and come back and says, no, we're not doing scholarships. So then now I'm confused. Does the district have to have a scholarship committee? And do we need to define, and in those terms and conditions, it mentions that we have to define what kind of scholarships we're willing to fund, we're willing to support. Okay.
I think the old scholarship committee was ambassadorial scholarships.
Yeah.
And then there's a committee for the Peace Scholar applicants, but district grants can be used for scholarships. It says in the terms and conditions. And I know that some clubs have used district grants to assist students going into internships.